Hello, everyone. Today I have an incredible survival story for you. Imagine being stranded in a canyon with no way out. That's what happened to Aron Ralston. He was hiking alone in Utah when a large boulder pinned his arm and left him stranded for days. With limited food, water, and no way to call for help, Aron had to make the hardest decision of his life to escape. In the end, his determination and courage saved him. So, what would you do in such a situation? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories and English practice. Let's get to the story. Aron Ralston was an adventure-loving mountaineer. That day, just like he had done many times before, he set out on a solo journey. As he made his way toward Blue John Canyon in the remote deserts of Utah, excitement filled his heart. The sky was bright blue, and the hot sun made the rocks shine like gold. He thought he knew the area well. However, a small mistake would change his life forever. He checked the small amount of water and a few snacks in his backpack. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. For him, it was just an ordinary exploration, a few hours of hiking and then back home. At least, that was the plan. But nature doesn't always follow plans. As he moved through the canyon, he reached a narrow passage. Massive rocks, weighing hundreds of tons, towered above him. The path, only a few meters wide, would lead him to a larger cave system. As he reached the middle of the passage, the rock beneath his foot shifted slightly. A moment of panic struck him, but he quickly regained his balance. Yet, when he heard that terrifying sound from above, his heart pounded in his chest. A large boulder was tumbling down fast. There was no time to escape. Within seconds, his right arm became trapped between the rock and the canyon wall. At first, he was in shock. The pain spread through his veins like fire. Now think about it. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Would you try to call for help first? Or would you immediately look for a way to lift the rock? Is it even possible to think logically without panicking? Aron took a deep breath and tried to assess the situation. Could he reach his backpack? Where were his water and knife? He tried to push the rock to free his arm, but it wouldn't budge. Within minutes, he realized that escaping on his own was nearly impossible. So, what about you? What would be the first thing that comes to your mind in such a situation? Would you panic, or would you search for a way to survive? Aron Ralston tried to take deep breaths as he struggled with the pain. He must not panic. His biggest obstacle was not only the rock pinching his arm, but also his isolation. He hadn't told anyone where he was, and this was an almost no man's land. Who would recognize him and when? Minutes began to turn into hours, hours into days. Hunger and thirst were slowly making themselves felt. All he had with him was a bottle of water and some snacks. Water was vital. Calculating the days, he started drinking small amounts. But what was really scary were the nights. The desert nights were freezing. After the first night of shivering, Aron began to understand the situation better. He couldn't wait here forever. What would you do? How could you make the water last longer? How would you cope with lack of sleep and hunger? What methods would you have tried to call for help? As the days progressed, Aron began to fall apart mentally. He knew that if he didn't find a way out, he would die here. Again and again he tried to push the rock away, but each time the result was the same. The rock pinching his arm would not budge. A crazy idea began to form in his brain. If he couldn't free his arm, should he get rid of it? But how? All he had with him was a small, dull penknife. Was such a thing possible? Could he do it? By the fifth day, Aron Ralston's body had reached the point of exhaustion. Each time the sun rose and set, his hopes dwindled a little more. His water had run out. The hunger became unbearable. His body grew weak. His mind began to cloud. But worst of all, his trapped arm was slowly turning gangrenous and swelling unbearably. Was this going to be his grave? The same thought kept running through his brain. What if this was the only way out? What if he would really die if he didn't cut his arm off? It was the only option in front of him. But did he have the strength to do it? What would you do? How long would you wait to make such a decision? How would you mentally prepare yourself for such a thing? Is it possible to do it with a single knife? With trembling hands, Aron took out his small pocket knife. First, he cut his skin. The pain was excruciating. But it wasn't the muscles that were the problem. How would he get to the bone? He realized that his penknife was not sharp, so he had to break the bone. How could he muster the courage to break his own bone? He took a deep breath. He thought one last time. If he didn't do it now, this rock would be his grave. And then, with all his strength, he twisted his arm and broke the bone. A scream filled him. His eyes glazed over. He gasped for breath, but it wasn't over yet. He had to cut the nerves. This was the moment of the most excruciating pain. Aron forced himself not to lose consciousness. When with one last effort he got rid of his arm, he was bleeding on the floor. But now he was free. Free. Aron Ralston had finally freed his arm. But freedom did not mean escape from death. His body was shaking from the loss of blood, his head was spinning, and his eyes were growing dim with every step. But he could not give up. If he fell here, there was no chance of survival. He did his best to stop the blood gushing out of his arm. He tore his clothes to create a tourniquet of sorts. But time was working against him. The more blood he lost, the harder it was for him to stand. Can you walk 8 kilometers in this state? Every step was torture, but he had no choice but to take it. He dragged himself between the rocks, stumbled forward. When he reached the end of a valley with his last strength, he saw a group of hikers in the distance. Summoning all his strength, he shouted, "Help!" But his voice was weak. He shouted a second time. This time the hikers noticed him. They ran to him in amazement. No one expected such a sight. A man without an arm, bleeding, starving. And then the miracle happened. The helicopter was called and Aron was taken to the hospital. He was alive. Aron Ralston has not forgotten this moment of near death. He has become a stronger person. He wrote about it in his book, 127 Hours, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. In 2010, his story reached millions with an Oscar-nominated movie. Today, she works as an inspirational speaker all over the world. In his speeches, he always gives the following message. No matter what happens in life, as long as you don't give up, you can overcome any obstacle. What do you think Aron's greatest strength was? His physical endurance or his mental strength? If you were to experience such an event, how would you move on with your life? Today we tell you the incredible survival story of Aron Ralston. We saw how a person who doesn't give up can survive by sheer willpower. So, what would you do? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video for more fascinating stories and English practice. See you in the next video.